turning now to special counsel Robert Mueller's probe on alleged Russian election interference. In court documents unsealed yesterday, Mueller's office argues that former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort and his associate Rick Gates pose a risk of flight based on the serious nature of the charges due to their financial resources and foreign connections. The two have pled not guilty to a 12-count indictment. That happened on Monday. This coming as Fox News sources confirmed that Mueller has scheduled an interview with White House Communications Director Hope Hicks regarding the probe. Yesterday, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders defended the president and called out the mainstream media for how they're covering this investigation. Watch.
You guys seem completely obsessed with this while there are a lot of other things happening around the country and, frankly, a lot of other things that people care a lot more about. The media refuses to cover it, and I think that's the distraction. Instead of the focus being constantly on tax cuts and tax reform, my guess is if you look at the records, the questions that I take in here day out have far more to do with an investigation that, frankly, most Americans don't care too much about, and a whole lot less to do with policies that actually impact them.
All right, let's bring in Judge Andrew Napolitano right now. Judge, what's your take? Good morning to you.
Well, good morning, guys. Always nice to be with you, no matter how bad the news might be. I mean, she's making the president's argument. He'd rather people were talking about tax reform than about Bob Mueller, but the fact remains that these indictments and the guilty plea of George Papadopoulos blindsided the White House. It was unprepared for them because it didn't know that they were going to happen. Manafort allegedly told colleagues over the weekend he was convinced, even though he had heard the rumors that the indictments were coming, that he was not among them. I'll tell you what's very interesting that you mentioned in your intro is that Bob Mueller argued in sealed documents, which are open yesterday, that Mueller and Gates are flight risks. That tells me there will be another bail hearing at which the government will seek to have Manafort and Gates incarcerated rather than just confined to house arrest. Both of these, incarceration, house arrest, $10 million bail for somebody whose face is recognizable internationally, seems severe to me. These are not crimes of violence. This guy, whatever you think of him, even if he did everything the government says he did, he's not a danger to women and children, but they're treating him that way.
Judge, that's the critical point, though, is that they want to get Manafort to flip.
Yeah, they want to.
But you do that before
you
throw him
indict.
No, I know, but this is a tactic.
Yeah, the tactic is to get Gates to flip on Manafort and Manafort to flip on somebody, either the president of the United States or somebody between Manafort, and we know who they are, and the president. So there's General Flynn in there, a potential defendant. There's Jared Kushner. The government has seized many of his banking records, which obviously have nothing to do with Russia or even the campaign.
And then
but
Hope
they've
Hicks,
seized
what
these
is Hope
records.
Hicks going to tell them?
Well, she has been a confidant of the president, and Bob Mueller is speaking to everybody who has interacted with the president.
So he's just trying to take the president down.
Yes, there's no question.
That's what this is about.
There's no question but that their target is Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States. And the federal government has perfected the art of going after the high-profile target by indicting people that interacted with him below him on the totem pole.
And you know how I know that? Because there's no investigation or no real focus on what happened on the Democrat side. The fusion GPS, the paying for the dossier by the Democrats, and
so there was one event.
Where's the accountability there, Judge?
I think you make a great argument. There's one event that took place. Mary knows what I'm about to say on the Democrat side, and that is John Podesta's brother, who shared the Ukraine and that political party as a client with Manafort, resigned from his company. Did he resign because of bad publicity? Or has Bob Mueller been knocking on the door? Now, if Bob Mueller starts indicting Democrats, he's got an insurance policy. Nobody's ever going to get rid of him. No one's ever going to argue that he's biased and partisan. And there are plenty of Democrats.
But we haven't seen that yet.
No, we haven't. And there are plenty of Democrats as to whom there is sufficient probable cause to proceed after them.
Judge, to your point, so there was this home invasion, if you would, from the FBI agents in Manafort back in July.
That goes to what Dagan was saying, to terrify him. They treated him as if he were a drug dealer.
And
so
you said that too,
they say you're going to be indicted, and yet now he comes into court, and now the judge says you're a flight risk. So what happened in between July and now in terms of him? He has no restrictions on his passport. He has certainly a lot of wealth. If he was going to flee, as a former judge, what would you take into account? Why would you make that decision now? That
I would conclude that if he was going to flee, he would have done so already, and that he's not a flight risk. I would have released him on his own recognizance, and I might have required some bail from Gates because nobody knows who he is. He could show up in Zurich tomorrow or someplace that's safe in Europe. I'm not picking on Zurich, and nobody would know who he was. But Manafort couldn't go anywhere without people knowing who he is. But if you read this letter that Bob Mueller sent to the judge, it lists every place that Paul Manafort has been in the past 5 months. It's 35 or 40 different countries on a private jet, bypassing the TSA.
Yeah,
so all this goes, my God, he's doing all this flying around the world, and the government doesn't know about it. He's free to do so.
Could it be that Mueller needs to make a spectacle to take the attention away from the fact that there is zero evidence that has been presented so far of any collusion between President Trump and Russia? And that's why we see these big PR stunts, and now today he's threatening, you know, to get him in. I mean, Hope Hicks doesn't.
I couldn't agree with you more, Mary. A column tomorrow, which comes out on Thursdays, argues that none of this has anything to do with Donald Trump, unless they can squeeze these people. And the danger with squeezing is they will sing. And sometimes they sing a song that they invent because they tell the prosecutor what the prosecutor wants to hear to get the pressure off themselves. That's the way the feds prosecute. It's reprehensible, but they've been doing it for generations.
The collusion is on the Democratic side. The real investigation is the House Intelligence Committee and the investigation they're doing
Except that the House Intelligence Committee can't indict. Only Bob Mueller can indict. So he's got to start looking at them, too.
Devin Nunes on the Ingram angle the other night basically said, look, the FBI lied. And then she said, well, who's lying? He said probably the whole FBI. I mean, it's incredible when you look at the relationship between the FBI and Mueller and also the Department of Justice and Mueller.
Yes.
Yeah. Lots of conflicts.
This is not your grandfather's FBI. This is an FBI that does not hesitate. I'm not talking about Chris Wray, but under Jim Comey,
well,
to get involved in politics.
As long as it's favoring the Democrats.
Whoever they want to favor at the moment.
Judge, thank you.